Oh, we're starting right at the source today because we need to talk about her. The female security officer who decided, in the middle of a playoff win, that her job description suddenly included professional intimidator. Let's not pretend this didn't feel personal. She didn't walk over casually. She didn't check credentials. She didn't ask questions. She stared, long, hard, with energy that screamed, "Know your place." Well, she'd picked the wrong one, because if she thought Sophie Cunningham was going to flinch, apologize, or look away like a scolded child, she learned real quick that Sophie doesn't blink, literally or figuratively. And let's just be clear, this wasn't about safety. This wasn't crowd control. This was an athlete being unruly or threatening. Sophie wasn't even in uniform.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
She was injured, sitting calmly, supporting her team, existing. So what was this really? A power play. A very awkward, very transparent, very unnecessary flex from someone trying to remind a player of her place. Except, newsflash, Sophie Cunningham knows her place. And it's center stage whether you like it or not. Now, let's talk about the energy behind that stare. Because this wasn't some security protocol. This wasn't, "Hey ma'am, I need you to move." This was some weird, slow, silent escalation. You could feel the tension crackling through the screen like a live wire. And Sophie? Oh! She met it with that same slow, controlled, ice-cold glare. No words. No dramatics. Just pure defiance. A kind of "you thought you ate" expression that immediately went viral and rewrote the entire narrative of that night. Because no one was talking about the Fever's win. They were talking about her. About that stare. About why league security felt empowered to confront a player like that in front of cameras, teammates, and fans. And more importantly, why it always seems to happen to players like her. That's when it hit everyone. This wasn't an isolated moment. This was the symptom of something bigger, something uglier, something that's been simmering beneath the surface of the WNBA for years. It's the subtle silencing, the selective scrutiny, the league's obsession with image, and the players who get punished for not fitting it. Sophie Cunningham has always been one of those players. She's not fake polished. She doesn't give bland quotes. She doesn't nod and smile her way through conflict. She's passionate. She's vocal. She's real. And that makes her dangerous to people who want this league to be a tightly curated highlight reel of acceptable behavior. But here's the thing. That's not what fans want. Fans don't show up for mannequins. They show up for messy, human, unpredictable stars who make them feel something. Sophie's never been anyone's corporate puppet, and that's exactly why she's a fan favorite. So when this cop rolled up with all that misplaced authority and tried to give Sophie the "you better fix your face" routine, it backfired in spectacular fashion. And then just like that, the Staredown exploded. Clips circulating like wildfire. Screenshots turned into memes. Thousands of fans tweeting in defense of Sophie, questioning why the league keeps coming so hard for the wrong people. It wasn't just drama, it was a reckoning. And let's not pretend this would have gone down the same way with any other player. Imagine for 1 second if this had happened to one of the league's media darlings, someone already carefully positioned as the face of the brand. Do you think security would have dared make a move? Or will we be getting pre-written statements about miscommunication and respect? Exactly. This whole situation exposed a double standard so plainly, it's almost comical. Players who toe the company line get soft gloves. But players like Sophie, who push boundaries, challenge narratives, and speak freely, get stared down by security in front of a crowd. It's not just optics, it's a pattern, and fans see it. You can't pretend to care about player empowerment and then send body language goons to shut them up. And while we're here, let's talk about that post-game moment. Because while the clip of the Staredown was dramatic, what Sophie said after was even more powerful. She didn't go off. She didn't rant. She didn't even look rattled. Instead, she hit that calm, sharp, bone-cutting tone that says, "I see what you did, and so does everyone else." She called out the overreaction. She called out the energy. She did it without cursing, without name-dropping, without breaking a sweat. Just enough to let the league know this isn't getting swept under the rug. And in that moment, she wasn't just an athlete anymore. She became a symbol. A symbol for every player who's been told to shut up and play. A symbol for every woman who's been glared at by someone with a badge and a complex. A symbol for every voice that's been minimized because it wasn't easy to manage. The internet knew it. The fans felt it. And the league? They got caught playing referee in a game they didn't even realize was being watched. And you'd think maybe this would have been the point where the WNBA stepped in to clarify, to apologize, to say, hey, yeah, that security moment, that was not it. But nope, silence. Because that's what happens when an organization cares more about maintaining control than accountability. And let's just talk brass tacks for a second. Sophie Cunningham is good for business. She's got game, personality, and viral appeal. She should be front and center in every Grow the Game campaign. Instead, she's getting policed for her posture. Meanwhile, the league is trying to court sponsors, boost ratings, and expand its market. Here's a little tip. If you want mainstream success, maybe don't alienate the exact players who create the moments people actually care about. Because viral staredowns, that's marketing. That's buzz. That's real engagement you can't manufacture. You don't shut that down, you amplify it. But that's the problem. The WNBA keeps trying to filter itself into a sanitized version of empowerment. A version where emotion is only allowed if it's smiling and clapping politely. And that's not what fans came here for. Fans came for fire, for conflict, for stories, for moments that remind us that sports are alive. Sophie Cunningham brought all of that in one look, and the league tried to put her back in a box. But here's the twist. The box is broken. You can't contain this kind of realness anymore. The culture is changing. Fans want to see the flaws, the fights, the fallout. They want players who don't apologize for being fully themselves. And if the league doesn't get on board, it'll get left behind by its players and its audience. Because at the end of the day, Sophie didn't just survive the stare down. She won it. She didn't flinch. She didn't back down. She didn't play nice. She just existed boldly and let the rest of the world do the math. And now, she's not just trending. She's transcending. So here's your moment, WNBA. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to keep pretending this never happened? Keep protecting the image while the core cracks? Or are you finally going to face the fire and realize the fire is the point? Because Sophie's not going anywhere, and neither are her fans. This is your chance to evolve, to grow with your players, instead of pushing them out when they don't fit the mold. You've got the athletes. You've got the audience. Now it's time to decide. Are you building a brand, or are you just babysitting it? Because we're watching, we're remembering. And the next time something like this happens, the stare down won't be a clip. It'll be a movement. So if you're here for the fire, the fallout, and the fierce women who refuse to be policed into silence, hit that subscribe. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us, was Sophie out of line? Or did she just show us what a real leader looks like in a league that's still figuring out how to handle her? Either way, one thing's clear. That stare said it all. And now, we're all looking back. A professional athlete, injured, minding her business on the sidelines, locks eyes with a league-hired security guard, and somehow that becomes the most controversial thing to happen in the entire playoff round. Not a flagrant foul, not a locker room blow-up, a stare that turned into a movement. Because once that moment hit the timeline, it didn't just spark gossip. It tore the lid off something deeper, something most fans, players, and insiders have been side-eyeing for years. The quiet, calculated, and let's be real, cowardly ways the WNBA enforces control over its own stars. Let's call it what it is. Image management disguised as professionalism. And Sophie Cunningham? She disrupted that illusion with nothing but her eyes. That's the kind of power you can't teach. That's not media training. That's not sponsorship polish. That's raw presence. And you either know how to handle that, or you try to contain it. The WNBA tried to contain it, and they failed. Spectacularly. Because when the league's unofficial security, aka the WNBA's version of the image police, decides it's appropriate to posture in front of a woman who's not even in uniform, all while cameras are rolling. That's not enforcement. That's insecurity. Seriously, what was the actual threat here? Sophie's aura? Her side profile? Her unwillingness to look away? And let's not forget, the person doing the staring wasn't just a regular event staffer. This was league-level security. Someone operating under direct instructions to monitor behavior, maintain order, and keep undesirable moments off camera. Oops. Too late. Because the second that stare hit TikTok, Twitter, and every group chat from Indiana to Istanbul, the story stopped being about a security guard and started being about a system, a pattern, a way of treating bold women as problems to be solved rather than stars to be celebrated. And that's when fans went into full CSI mode. People started pulling up receipts, past moments, old quotes, patterns, and to get suspended, fined, warned, benched, or stare down. And the dots? Oh, they started connecting fast. The message was clear. If you speak up, stand out, or stray from the carefully curated brand, you're not just taking a risk. You're inviting the league to come for you. Quietly, forcefully, and often without explanation. Sound familiar? It's the same script that's played out with other high-profile women in this league. The ones who say too much, who show too much emotion, who don't package themselves in the right way. It's not about performance. It's about palatability. And Sophie Cunningham? She's not palatable. She's powerful. She's not a league mannequin. She's not a post-game cliche. She's not a placeholder for a brand. She's an athlete with attitude, and she refuses to dilute it for anyone. So the second someone tried to test her, someone who clearly thought she could just eyeball Sophie into submission, it became a moment. But that's the thing. It wasn't just a moment. It was a mirror. And in that mirror, the WNBA saw a reflection it didn't like. A player they can't control. A fan base that's watching everything. And a reputation that's cracking under pressure. Here's the uncomfortable part no one inside the league office wants to say out loud. They are not in control of the narrative anymore. Not in 2025. Not in the age of camera phones, slow motion replays, and side-by-side Twitter breakdowns. You can't spin your way out of an incident that's literally looping on every platform. You can't pretend a stare never happened when people are wearing it on t-shirts. And you definitely can't silence a player like Sophie Cunningham with intimidation tactics. Because now, the fans have spoken. And they're not just defending her. They're rallying behind her. The WNBA tried to squash a spark. And instead, they lit a fire that's now burning through every conversation about double standards, selective discipline, and the league's complete failure to support the very women who make it worth watching. You know what else Sophie's stare exposed? The total lack of league protection when things get real. Because where was the statement? The clarification? The apology? The accountability? Nowhere. Once again, the WNBA hid behind its own silence, hoping the moment would fade, hoping fans would move on, hoping Sophie wouldn't say more. Spoiler, she didn't need to. She already said it all, with her eyes. And that's the part that stings the most of the league. This wasn't some full-blown scandal. Sophie didn't scream. She didn't post a cryptic Instagram story. She didn't cuss anyone out. She stared. And that was enough to shake the system. That should terrify the WNBA's leadership. Not because Sophie is a threat, but because the system is so fragile that a single look can expose how broken it is. So here's the bigger question. What happens next? Because if history tells us anything, the league is going to try to memory hold this. Internal memos will fly. Security protocols will be rewritten. PR teams will prep statements they hope they never have to use. But none of that fixes the problem. Because the problem isn't what Sophie did. The problem is how the league responded to it. With silence, with suppression, and with the kind of bureaucratic cowardice that fans see right through. You know what a real league does? It backs its players. It owns its mistakes. It evolves. But what we're seeing now, it's not evolution. It's erosion of trust, of loyalty, of credibility. And if the WNBA doesn't course correct fast, they're going to lose more than just a PR battle. They're going to lose the culture war. Because the players are watching. The sponsors are watching. And the fans? Oh, we've never been more alert. We've got time. We've got opinions. And we got screenshots. So the league can pretend all it wants that this is just another headline. That'll go away by next week. That they can gaslight their way out of accountability. But we know better. Sophie Cunningham showed us what strength looks like when everything around you is trying to minimize it. She didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. She didn't conform. She stared back, and in doing so, became the face of a much bigger fight. A fight for freedom of expression, for consistency, for fairness, for respect. The stare down was never about eye contact. It was about power. And now that power is shifting away from the suits and back to the players. So, WNBA, it's your move. Do you double down on silence? Or do you finally wake up and listen to the roar outside your sanitized boardroom? And to everyone else watching this unfold, don't blink, because this isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new era. An era where players don't just show up. They speak up. They stare down. They stand tall. And if that makes the league uncomfortable, good. Because growth doesn't come from comfort. It comes from confrontation. And Sophie Cunningham? She just confronted an entire system with nothing but presence. If you thought that was the end of the stare that broke the WNBA, oh no, that was just the pause before the punchline. Let's wrap this up with the energy Sophie brought to that sideline, and that security officer clearly wasn't ready for. See, what people keep forgetting is this. You don't have a scream to shake the room. Sometimes all it takes is one woman sitting down, saying nothing and refusing to look away. And that's why this hit the league like a slap in the face. Not because it was loud, but because it was honest. And honesty is dangerous when you're operating inside a system built on curated silence. You have to ask, why was a simple stare down so destabilizing to the powers that be? Because deep down, the WNBA knows it's skating on thin ice when it comes to handling outspoken players. And when that dynamic gets caught on camera, when the league's unspoken tension gets broadcast to millions in the form of an 8-second clip, you can't just sweep that under the rug. There is no spin strategy for this. The security officer's body language said everything. That stiff stance. That long, lingering, unblinking glare. Not protective. Not procedural. Just straight up provocative. It was giving discipline. It was giving control. It was giving, you're not welcome here unless you know your role. But the truth is, Sophie's role is bigger than the league ever planned for. She wasn't drafted to be a side character. She became a symbol, not through branding, but through boldness. And you know what's funny? The league should be thanking her. Because for a few days, the WNBA wasn't just in sports news. It was in mainstream headlines. The video had reach. The memes had range. The discourse had depth. People who don't even watch the WNBA were asking, wait, what's this stare thing? Who is Sophie Cunningham? She broke the algorithm. She gave them the moment. And what did she get in return? A cold shoulder and a passive-aggressive power move by someone who clearly wanted to put her in check like she was a rebellious teen and not a grown, professional athlete. But the moment that officer squared up like it was a Wild West showdown, Sophie sat tall, stared back, and dared the league to blink first. And now, everyone's eyes are wide open. Let's go deeper, though, because this wasn't just a bad call by one power-tripping staffer. This was the byproduct of an entire culture that treats expressive players like liabilities. A culture that says, you could be a star as long as you're our kind of star. You know what that really means. It means, smile for the cameras. Keep the interviews bland. Don't say too much. Don't complain. Don't point out hypocrisy. Be humble. Be likable. Be quiet. But you can only muzzle so many players for so long before one of them stares back and dares you to do something about it. And Sophie's timing? Perfect. The league wants mainstream attention. They want sponsors, streaming deals, primetime coverage. But you can't court the spotlight and then panic when the wrong kind of light hits you. That's what made this such a moment. It wasn't manufactured. It wasn't PR. It wasn't staged. It wasn't even intentional. It was real, raw tension that couldn't be controlled. And that's why it exploded. Because fans are starved for real. And the league? It keeps serving fake. You know what fans don't care about? Brand-safe sound bites. Instagram captions written by interns. A 5-minute press conference where every answer sounds like it came from the same template. You know what they do care about? Passion, fire, chaos, conflict. Moments like Sophie's stare, where the performance stops and the person shows up. That's what resonates. So when the league treats that kind of authenticity like a threat, it shows exactly how disconnected they are from what people actually want. You don't need to reinvent the WNBA to make it mainstream. You just need to let it breathe, let the players speak, let the drama unfold, let people feel something. Sophie Cunningham did all that, without ever leaving her seat. That's power. That's why she's not just a player anymore. She's a problem for a league that doesn't know how to handle people who don't flinch. And if they were smart, they'd realize she's also the solution. Because the league can't keep growing on the backs of players they won't fully support. You want TV deals? Let the stars be stars. You want viral moments? Let the chaos cook. You want loyalty from fans? Back your players. Even when they make you uncomfortable. Especially when they make you uncomfortable. Because that stare wasn't about Sophie being difficult. It was about her demanding to be seen, unfiltered. And that terrifies people who are used to curating the narrative. But here's the deal. The fans don't want curated. They want Cunningham. And now that this Staredown has taken on a life of its own, the league doesn't get to decide when it's over. Because every time they silence a player, fans will remember this moment. Every time they pick and choose who gets protected, they'll hear the echoes of this story. Every time someone tries to punish personality, they'll be asked, "Are you just scared they'll pull Sophie?" Because that's what happens when you try to shame someone who isn't scared of shame. They win. And then the rest of us? We follow. So where does that leave us now? It leaves us in a league at a crossroads between control and chaos, between brand and authenticity, between holding power and sharing it. And the WNBA has a choice to make. Do you keep policing the players who make you relevant? Or do you start listening to them before they stop listening to you? Because Sophie Cunningham stared back, and in doing so, stared straight to the league's pretty little facade. She showed us the cracks. Now it's on the league to either patch them up or let the whole thing fall apart. Because if you want stars, you need to let them shine, even if they burn a little brighter than you expected. And if you're still here, if you're still fired up like we are, still scrolling Twitter threads and pausing to stare down clip frame by frame like it's a Zapruder film, then yeah, you get it. So drop your hot take in the comments. Subscribe for more breakdowns, meltdowns, and unfiltered moments the league can't PR their way out of. And tell us, did Sophie go too far? Or did she just pull the WNBA's curtain down and show us what's really going on backstage? Because whether you loved it or hated it, one thing for sure, she stared down the system. And we all saw it blink.